Another thing that I've been looking at lately, Al, is something outside my area of expertise. And I love to go outside my area of expertise. And then sometimes I wonder if I have an area of expertise as I get older and realize that I've looked at only such a small sampling of tissue in my so-called scientific studies. I've come to realize that I'm really only qualified to enjoy what I do in many ways, rather than to feel that I can speak ex cathedra on what other people think and what reality may or may not be. And one of the things that has always provided the deepest satisfaction is an engagement that is not intellectual, but it involves intelligence and it involves feeling at the same time. That's music. Because I love to sing in the shower and in the car alone and maybe with friends around the piano. But I'm not a soloist or anything, but I do love to sing in choral groups. And just this past few months, I've come to think about Johann Sebastian Bach in ways that I never did before, and in ways that I've been led to by people who are experts in Bach. I am a member of the Boulder Bach Festival choir for this year, and we're performing the St. Matthew Passion in a few weeks. And I was asked to give a lecture on Bach's Lutheranism and how that relates to the times and to the text of the St. Matthew Passion, particularly in the areas of what do we call it, the doctrines of redemption, the doctrines of atonement, and so forth. And does that change in Bach's work over time, and so forth? Well, I'm beginning to learn that it does change, and that there are different focuses for this. But there's something else, and so I'm preparing a lecture with a musicologist colleague. I'm no musicologist. But what I've become very interested in Bach is performing Bach and thinking about Bach in the context of my studies of liturgy. And what I'm going to do, I hope, in the next 2 years, is to fashion a whole major segment of my course on Christian liturgy and spirituality on the Passion genre that goes over several centuries from the Middle Ages to the 18th century. And it ends pretty much with Bach in the 18th century. And what I've come to be most fascinated by, I could not give a name to, but a wonderful musicologist by the name of Eric Chafe and his colleagues have done this, the idea of tonal allegory in the vocal music of Bach. And that's the title, almost, of one of his books. That is, what are the relationships between the keys, the major and minor keys, of Bach's settings and the texts that he is deploying, both from the scriptures, the St. Matthew scripture of the Passion, or the St. John, or whatever, and the other things that he utilizes, especially the chorale tradition. And what Bach does, of course, is to use the great poetic hymns of the Lutheranism of the 1600s and the 1700s and the 1500s and the melodies of congregational worship, and incorporates those into the St. Matthew Passion. Now, you don't read the names of those authors and composers when you're looking at the score, but they're all there. Probably most people think that Bach wrote it all. He didn't. He didn't claim to, and everybody knew he didn't at the time, if you're looking at the context. But he engages the people, not only the performers, but I would call it the congregation, and not an audience, into the total reflection upon the Passion and its meaning for them in that place and time. Not as a historical exercise, but as a more of a sacramental exercise of experiencing the death of Christ, of Jesus, and the burial, and so forth. But using a whole set of patterns of major and minor keys, depending on what is being talked about and presented, and then the whole circle comes together. Now, that's something that I hadn't looked at before. I had just told the students that this is a great work of art and you should listen to it. But I hadn't begun to be able to get in and see what the house is made of and what the corners are and what the windows are about. Because it is like a cathedral in sound. It has such an architecture to it, or an architectonic quality. And so this is something that is challenging me now in my 60s to, I hope, a few years of both enjoyable and productive engagement and study. Because I have a lot of what is needed to do this from my work in theology and in the history of religions and material culture and Christianity, but I don't have those things on the musicological side that I am going to try to get from good readings and good colleagues and music and so forth, and see if I can advance the way I teach ritual and liturgy and spirituality by understanding the very clever and skilled techniques of a great Christian like Johann Sebastian Bach. Like Robert Frost, when he was asked if he ever uses tricks in his poetry at the Breadloaf Writers' Conference, he said, "Madam, I revel in them." And I think Bach did too.